Hello, Ruby enthusiasts. In today's video, I'm going to be building an application using Cursor and Claude 3.5 Sonnet. I may even try Claude 4 Sonnet at some point during the video. I'm going to be building an application to help me track my stock portfolio with a focus on dividend-paying stocks. I'm going to try a little something different. For each prompt that I put in the chat window, I'll put it up on the screen, giving you a chance to pause the video and read it if you're interested. To save time, I've already set up the project. I set it up using Rails 8 with import maps. I'm using Flowbyte components and, of course, Tailwind CSS. I'm also using SQLite for my database. If you're interested in setting up a project like this, you can check out my earlier video on setting up Flowbyte in Rails. In a new chat window, I'm going to choose Claude 3.5 Sonnet. I'm going to put it in agent mode, and I'm going to prime the context with my first prompt. Like usual, Claude has given me a good summary of the project, including the framework and technology stack, authentication and security, the development environment, front-end architecture, project structure, development tools, and special considerations. Before I go any further, I wanted to mention that I did set up some cursor rules for the project with some prompts, kind of giving the AI some insight as to what its role is in the project, some framework versions for the different technologies I'm using, and some architecture and coding tips. Because I added this as an always rule in Cursor, it's going to be included in each new chat window. If you're not using Cursor, of course, you can do the same thing just by including a file in each new chat window. For the first generative prompt, I'm going to be asking Claude to build the dashboard for our application. The dashboard is going to have a nav bar across the top of it that's going to have a avatar for signed in users along with a drop-down menu and also a logo in the corner. In order to improve the outcome, I've included 3 web documents into the context. They're all Flowbyte documents for the nav bar, the light dark mode toggle, and the drop-down menu. Now we'll go ahead and send that with our prompt. Claude is now done generating our code. It's created our controller, an index page. It's created a stimulus controller to handle the light dark mode theme support. And a Flowbyte nav bar has been added to the application layout. And then the route has been added to the routes file. So offline, I started the Rails server and I created a test user in our database. And now I jump over into the browser and open up localhost 3000. And you can see the root route is now our dashboard, essentially, but it took us to the sign-in link, which I would expect. We have our nav bar with a logo up in the left-hand corner, and then a sign-in link in the right-hand corner, which of course takes us to the sign-in page. We've got our forgot password, which looks correct too. So we'll go back to the sign-in. I'm going to log in as my test user. Great. And so we've landed on our dashboard. We don't have any contrast here, but this is, of course, just dummy text anyway, so it doesn't matter. And we have, now that we're logged in, we have our avatar up in the corner, which is just a placeholder. And inside here, it's done a nice little drop-down menu with our sign out link and toggle dark mode, which clicking on that, it's not currently working. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the console and see if we're getting any JavaScript errors, which we are not. So we're going to ask Cursor to fix this for us. So let's jump back over to the browser and refresh the page, and we'll see if our light dark mode support is there. Great, looks good. Okay, let's start building our application. I'm going to start with the models and with this prompt. I asked Claude to ask any clarifying questions, and it looks like it has asked me several questions for me to respond to before it proceeds with creating the models. I have found that if I don't ask it to ask questions, then it will just go ahead and make assumptions that sometimes are incorrect, and I will have to correct them later. Here's a sampling. I'm not going to read all of the questions it generated, but here's a sampling of them. For the asset model, should the current price be stored in the database or should it be calculated from the latest asset change log entry? In this particular case, I'm going to want to store it because we're going to be reading a lot more than we're going to be updating the log. So I don't want to have to query that table every time I want to view that current price. And then just some general questions like what currency we should use and should we track the total gain loss for each asset? And should we add soft deletion paranoia to these models? Once you provide these clarifications, I can create the models and appropriate attributes, value, validations, and associations. So I'm going to go ahead offline and answer these questions. Okay, I've crafted a response to all of Claude's questions, and then we're going to let it get started. Now we're going to go ahead and run the migrations. And it looks like all of the migrations ran successfully. I forgot to add one model to my earlier prompt, so I'm going to go ahead and create another model called dividend payout. So I noticed when it was generating the model that it added a validation suggesting that or requiring that the asset associated with a payout is a holding account, which is not the case. So I created this prompt and had it remove that validation. Now we're going to have it start creating the tables on the dashboard, the tables for the assets, I should say specifically. And so I'm going to add another document to the context here. And this is the Flowbyte tables documentation. And I'm going to paste in this giant prompt here and we'll let it run. Okay, so let's jump back over to the browser and see what we have. I've already refreshed the page here. You can see we have our portfolio summary, which is coming soon. We told it would work on that next, but we have our table down here. This is our first goal, and there are two separate tables here. It looks like it's generated two different buttons here, a button group, and we can switch between the two tables, and they have the appropriate columns here. But I can see here that there's no contrast here, so I'm going to ask it to fix that. Okay, that looks better. Now I'm going to ask Claude to generate some seed data so that we can see what the table looks like with data in it. Now we're going to run the seeds. See, it's nice to be able to run these commands right inside of the chat window because then if there's an error, Claude picks it up and works on it without me having to copy and paste and reprompt. And the third time was the charm. We now have some seed data. And back in the browser, you can see we have our seed data being displayed in the table. Our general information table looks good. And our gains and losses table looks good. These edit buttons aren't doing anything at this point because we haven't asked it to build those features out yet. It does look like we don't have any year-to-date dividends. I'm not sure if that's just because the dividend dates are outside of this year, but we do have total dividends. So I can look at the data and see what's going on there and make sure it's not an issue. So far, looking at this seed data, it looks like all these dividend payouts were actually in 2023. So they're a couple years old. I can have it create some current seed data so that we can make sure that column works properly. So even though we have some payouts, it looks like from this year, our year-to-date dividend column still isn't being updated. And this doesn't make for a very interesting video to go through all of these little small fixes. So I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead and get all of these, make sure all of these columns are working. Okay, I believe I have all of the columns working. Let's take a look. Yep, we got our month to date, year to date gain loss, our year to date dividends, and it looks like the other fields are all correct. The next thing I'm going to have Claude work on is the row actions for our tables with this prompt. Okay, back in our browser, we can see we have our actions icon. And when I click on it, you can see we have the view, edit, add dividend, add transaction, and set price actions. Since in our mock data anyway, Berkshire Hathaway is not offering a dividend, that action should not be here, and it isn't. So we don't have the add dividend action. Again, I can see we have a little bit of a contrast problem with our hover. I can have that fixed next. The add dividend, add transaction, and set price actions here are designed for quick data entry. And so we're going to work on those next. In the context, I've included the Flowbyte documentation for their modal dialog and then this prompt, and we're going to go ahead and fire it now. So it looks like the code has been generated, and it did pick up on something that I'm glad it picked up on, which is that we need to refresh the table, or at least that table row, when a dividend is added, to make sure that the data is reflected in the row. And it says here that it's going to do that with turbo streams, which is exactly what it should be doing. So we're going to go ahead and test this out. Okay, let's jump right back over to the browser, refresh the page, and we can try adding a dividend. I'm going to go over to the gains and losses table, and let's take Microsoft, for example, and let's just add, why don't we just do $10? So it's 59 now. Let's add a $10 dividend. And it looks like it's been updated to 69. I'm going to refresh the page and make sure that that persisted. And it looks like it did, so we are good to go. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the add transaction modal dialog with this prompt. And let's go ahead and see what it does. Okay, Claude is done generating our code. Let's jump back over to the browser and refresh, and let's give it a try. It looks like Berkshire Hathaway. We have a total value of 14,000. Let's add a transaction. We're going to do some buying. It looks like it's picking the right security here. So we're going to do a buy as of today. We are going to buy, let's do 2 shares. And it looks like we have an error message. I'm going to have Claude fix this, and then we'll try again. Okay, let's give that a try again. Berkshire Hathaway, 14,000. Let's add a transaction. Let's buy 2 shares. And yep, it looks like it's been updated to 15,128. Let's refresh that. Yep, looks like our transaction was saved. Okay, now that we're done with the set or add transaction action, we're going to do the last action on here, which is set price. And we're going to do that with this prompt. So it looks like Claude picked up the fact that we have this security change log that logs changes to certain attributes in the security so that we can use them for reporting. In this particular case, it logs price changes. And so it's going to go ahead and add a log entry when the price gets updated, as well as update the price on the security record itself. Let's jump back over to the browser, refresh the page, and let's see this in action. So our current price on Apple is $175.04. Let's go ahead and bump that up to $205.04. And it looks like that change was reflected here. And that looks good. And it looks like the change was actually added to the security log like we expected. This is looking great. We've come a long way on this project. The only two major features that I want to add for the MVP is this view action, which is basically going to give me an overview of the entire security. And it's going to allow me to kind of view the transactions and delete transactions and edit transactions, doing the same thing with dividends, and also to look at the change log, the security change log for it. And then the second big feature that needs to be implemented is just this summary section up at the top, which is going to basically roll up all of these numbers and give me some portfolio summary information. I mentioned earlier in the video that I wanted to try Claude for Sonnet on some of this work. I've used Claude for Sonnet before, and I like it. I think it's pretty good, but I did find that it tends to make changes that I didn't ask for more than 3.5 does. So I generally lean on 3.5, but I'm going to go ahead and give Claude 4 another shot to build our view page. So I'm going to start over with a fresh context, and I'm going to switch it to Claude 4 Sonnet. And then I'm going to ask it the same question I asked Claude 3.5 at the beginning, which is just take a look at the project and give me a summary of it. You can see there briefly, Claude 4 does its reasoning, and you can actually expand it and see its reasoning if you want to, but I like that it collapses it by default. And here is the final summary it generated, complete with these cute little icons. You can see it's a little more thorough than 3.5. It hit the nail on the head, which I expected it to. It's got all of the right technologies, some of the key features of the application. And now that more of the application is done, I would expect to have more information in the summary. Talks about dividend tracking, portfolio or performance analysis, a variety of different topics here. Before I unleash Claude Floor, I've committed all of my work because, as I mentioned, it tends to make a lot of changes, and I don't want to get myself in a situation where it's difficult to reverse those changes. And so, with that said, I'm going to throw this big Uber prompt at it, and this is going to handle the view action. And let's see what it does. Claude jumped right in with the augmenting our controllers, our existing controllers, which I think is good. So it recognizes that the controllers are there and just started adding the other methods to it. Did the same thing with securities, transactions, and like I said, dividends. And then it updated our routes file for all of these actions and is working on the views. 7 minutes and several hundreds of lines of code later, and Claude is done generating our view feature. I'm going to accept all of the changes, and then I'm going to go over to the browser and see how it did. Okay, back in the browser, I'm going to refresh the page, and then we'll go over to Apple. We'll click on View, and it looks like it's done exactly what I asked for. I'm not sure exactly what this icon is. That's kind of interesting. It looks like it's the edit icon, and it also does not appear to be working, so we'll have to take a look at that. And then we have a delete icon, which should give a confirmation, but let's see. Nope, gives me the nice toast flash message, but it did not give me a confirmation dialog, so I'll need to go back and fix that as well. But overall, this looks pretty good. I'm pretty impressed with it. At this point, I would say the majority of the application is done. I would say it's probably 80 or 90% done, in fact. But I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here and finish the rest of this off video. But what do you think? What do you think of this? I think it looks really good. I think it's done a good job, and this application is going to be tremendously useful for me in tracking my dividend paying securities. But let me know what you think in the comments below. If you like the video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and give me a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. It really helps me out. Thanks, and we will see you in the next one.